Welcome to the Elevating La Cultura podcast, a space where I talk with Latinas who are passionate about what they do and are willing to share that passion with others to change the narrative, especially for the next generation. Each season is centered around different topics, but all with a Latina perspective. Welcome to Season 10, where I'm talking with Latinas who have founded nonprofits. I'm so excited to share these powerful conversations. So vámonos, and let's get into it. Jennifer Franco is a passionate advocate, author, and educator from the Northside of Chicago. She has overcome the challenges of being a first-generation, low-income Latina mother to make significant strides in the academic sector. With a BA in political science from NEIU and an MA in women and gender studies from Loyola, she is currently pursuing a PhD in higher education. Her commitment to eliminating racial, ethnic, and economic inequalities in education and beyond is deeply rooted in her Guatemalan background and experiences growing up in a single mother home. As the founder of Fempreneur Poder Hub, Jennifer empowers women of color in entrepreneurship, providing education, resources, referrals, and support networks. Her bilingual proficiency and expertise in post-secondary education and institutional engagement position her as a leader in advocating for equitable opportunities and systemic change. Let's get into the episode. Hi, I am here with Jen. She is the founder of an amazing nonprofit here in Chicago, and I'm so glad that we connected recently, and I just look forward to supporting you in the near future. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Jennifer Franco, and I am the founder and president for Fempreneur Poder Hub. It's a nonprofit organization helping empower and inspire and keep women afloat in their businesses. So we specifically target Black and Latina women who are already established businesses or that are considering the entrepreneurship journey. We provide financial resources, education, and other an enormous amount of resources that are out there, specifically working with the Cook County Small Business Source.
And I think as entrepreneurs, like this is an amazing resource to be tapped into and to be aware of, because especially when we're starting out, like we don't know what we don't know, and any type of help is much appreciated, especially for those starting out. And even like as seasoned entrepreneurs, like as we grow, like we're always looking for like help in how to get to the next level. So I love what you're doing with your organization, but I'd love to know what got you started on this journey.
Yes, so thank you for that. Well, it is a compilation of different things that happened not only while I was at the workforce in academia, but it was also a lot of my history as a child. So I come from a single household family. My mom was the primary breadwinner, and when my mom was with my dad, he left us homeless and we were out on the streets. So my mom didn't have the skill set to enter the workforce. So it was very couple of hard months and years because it was really hard for her to find a position without having any history of being in the workforce. So with that being said, we were going to school most of the time. We weren't fed because we didn't have the money to buy breakfast or buy eggs or, the simplest things that we take for granted. And that kind of left a scar in a lot of what I do for the community. And that's why I also don't charge for any of the services that we here at Fempreneur offer. All of our services are actually free. And another thing that kind of empowered and really pushed the needle to start the nonprofit was when I was working in academia. I had been working in academia for 10 years, and there's always this promise that if you keep getting certifications and keep going for your master's and your doctoral degree, things might change for you in academia, whether that be getting a director position, associate director position, whatever it is that you're looking for. The promise was that you're going to find something. Unfortunately, that's not what I found in my sphere. I am a Latina woman, I am a woman of color, and on top of that, I'm a female, right? So it's just harder for us to kind of break those barriers within academia when it's an institution. Well, institutions are, very patriarchal, very Caucasian. Primarily, a lot of what happens behind the scenes are run by individuals that, come from privileges. And with us, it's really hard to break into those spaces since we're not given the opportunities. Either we're kind of watered down and mentioned things such as, oh, you just don't have the qualifications yet, or you just don't have the experience to be supervising someone else yet. And a lot of the things that I questioned in academia was like, well, how am I supposed to get the experience if you're not giving me an opportunity to prove to you that I am the leader that you want me to be? But with that also being said, we're mostly underpaid and undervalued for our time. So they expect us to work non-exempt jobs without, the ability to also raise our own children and our own families. A lot of us that have extended family, we have to take care of our abuelos, our abuelas, our mothers, our children, and we're primarily caregivers. We always tend to give back and always care for others, and we forget about ourselves. And that's how Fempreneur got started, because I saw a lot of our fellows that were in academia were leaving. And I was like, where are you like transitioning to? And some of the women had actually mentioned that they had started their own consulting business, or they started an entrepreneurship journey, such as opening up their own storefront or creating their own little online kind of like store. So that's where the idea sparked. I was like, okay, so what can we do to kind of like maintain a flexible job that's not going to limit us, that's not going to say you're not good enough for this position, or you're not good enough for what you have. And this is where it was created. We piloted back in October. We didn't know what to expect. We were just like very like scared. We were like, okay, like let's see what we can do. So a friend of mine that was in academia decided to support the mission. Because I had some reserves, I was able to, get a venue, and was able to get food and whatnot. And then my other colleague was able to support with the gifts and stuff like that. So when we first launched, we had around 30 individuals that showed up, anywhere from nonprofit to other women that were actually creating their own businesses or that were in the nonprofit area. And it was really amazing to see where people's mindsets were as far as like the entrepreneurship journey, because we all have some struggles at some point. Like you said, Karina, there's a lot of people that, you don't know what you don't know, but also there's also people that you kind of like see that they won't take on the endeavor because they're too scared. They're too scared to start something that's going to be completely new to them. And for me, that's like my biggest thing is like, we have to experience things for ourselves. And we also have to be mindful that at some point, yes, we're going to fail, but we learn from those failures, because that only proves to us that we can be resilient and successful at what we're doing. And with the help of us, we'll be able to connect you to other resources that we have within our house, which is the Cook County Small Business Source, but also other different chambers of commerce that can help support you with your initiatives. So we're very hands-on, and we also advocate for anyone that needs support, whether that be us. If you feel comfortable enough, we go to the alderman's office. We kind of use our social media to target specific situations. And then we also use the connections that we've kind of built throughout this process to help assist individuals. So that's how everything kind of got developed, through an ecosystem of other women trying to aspire and become entrepreneurs themselves, but also because we're heavily involved in our community. That's how it developed. The community made it what it is today. If it wasn't for the support of these women that were there that first day of our inauguration, we wouldn't have gotten to the place that we are now. And we're just so thankful that we're going to be a year into it, and that we're actually helping and supporting people and now being recognized by the Cook County Small Business Source.
That's amazing. I didn't realize that you were going to be celebrating your first year coming up. How did you, so you said that initial meeting and meetup was that led by you, and what did you come to everyone else with like the plan and the framework of what you wanted to see, or was it kind of co-created?
Yes, I believe it was a little bit of both. So I had an idea for it, which was specifically targeting Black and Latinas because I am also doing my doctoral degree at Loyola University. So a lot of my work has to do with the Black and Latin community, specifically targeting Afro Latinas, which is another whole topic that we could talk about. But it's always been something that I've always struggled with because within our communities, there's also colorism, and that also takes a huge impact of how you see yourself and how you move around certain spaces. So, as you mentioned, we are going to be a year old, but everything kind of got meshed together with my initial thoughts of what I thought Fempreneur was going to be. And then the community coming and giving us feedback of what could be, right? What can we add? And we're still developing because we're in our infancy stage, right? So we just launched our newsletter, and last month we kind of like gave a breakdown of what we're going to be doing for the next couple of months until the end of the year. But we're really looking to expand this organization, and we're just very happy that people are reaching out and becoming involved in some of the things that we do, whether that be an event, whether that be becoming a board member, whether that's just volunteering. We're just so appreciative that people are actually listening to us, but knowing that the community needs something like this, because we don't only work in the north side, we also work in the south side. So primarily we work with Gage Park. We're trying to also hit Brighton Park, and some other surrounding communities there that need assistance because those resources are not coming to them. So basically what we're doing is we're going out there to the community and being on specific tabling events where we're like, here, this is what we do. This is what we're all about. How can we help you? Would you like me to visit your location, or would you like to come into our office space? So the co-collaboration there has been amazing because you don't know who you're going to meet. And that's how I've been able to get to meet people from Old National Bank, and how I've gotten to get acquainted with all these chambers of commerce and other individuals that have reached out to kind of co-create either curriculum or events so that we can all kind of like intertwine together. And you'd be so surprised to see how Chicago, everyone knows each other in some way, shape, or form.
That's so true because I got connected with you through another nonprofit, but it was also a post on Instagram that I follow this one entrepreneur, and she posted about an event coming up. And I think I was like, oh, I've heard that name before. So and so mentioned being on the board of this. And I was like, whoa, it is a small world, and everyone has like at least 1 or 2 degrees of touch point between each other in the corporate and entrepreneur space, which is like starting out as an entrepreneur, you feel like you're all alone and you're doing this alone. And you're just like, especially as you start to grow and shift mindset and get into different circles, you can feel lonely. Entrepreneurship can be lonely if you don't have that community. But once you start getting tapped in, you're like, whoa, I have so many resources just by going to this one networking event or going to this one event and connecting with this one person. And it can be really exciting. For those who are starting out or might not understand the opportunities that are out there with like your own community and like small government, what are the benefits of tapping into a chamber of commerce or getting to know your alderperson, or even like reaching out and starting to look at grants? Like, what is the benefit of being connected or just knowing what they offer? Because I know that when I first started, I did not know what a chamber of commerce was. And then when I found out, I'm just like, oh, I'm just a small business. Maybe I'm not big enough to be part of one, or like, because like I said, like I didn't know the opportunities or even what a grant was, and that I could like apply for a grant. Like, you only think of those things in such a a small, like only a small fraction of people who are in this space or this space can tap into that. And yeah, so how can you help explain what those resources are and like the benefits of them for entrepreneurs?
Yes, and I'm glad you asked that question, Karina, because just through this journey alone has been one of the biggest things that the same question has popped over and over again. And it's just like, what is a chamber of commerce? And sometimes I get a little bit surprised because I'm like, a chamber of commerce does so many things, right? But we just don't really tap into those resources because one, either we don't know, or two, we're just like scared because there's a fee to pay. And sometimes you're like, well, why do I have to pay a fee? Well, there's two things. One, the Chamber of Commerce actually highlights you as the entrepreneur, right? So you join whichever Chamber of Commerce. What I always say, join the Chamber of Commerce that makes most sense for you, but that it's also going to give you the most in return and aligns with your values. If it doesn't align with your values, I wouldn't suggest that you become part of a Chamber of Commerce that doesn't align. For example, I have a Latina community member that mentioned like, oh, I live in the Jefferson Park area, but there's no Latino community here. And it seems like they are very focused only on spotlighting certain kinds of businesses. And, it's kind of difficult to penetrate a certain market. So what can I do? Well, you don't have to join the one that's right next to you. You can do your own research and see what are all the chambers of commerce in the surrounding Chicagoland area, suburban area, and see like which one makes the most sense to me and who's my target audience. And I think that's how you're supposed to choose specifically who your target audience is, right? Because if you're going to be targeting only Latina women, then why are you going to go to the South Side and also only do a Black Chamber of Commerce, right? So you just need to be very careful who your target market is. So if you already have that, right, and you've already developed your target audience, then you're just going to choose based on what the information is that you have on the table. Now, two, some chambers of commerce are more active than others, right? So we all know the Illinois Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is the most, active and involved in the community. You see it in Noticias 44, in el canal Univisión 66, right? So these are some of the chambers of commerce that you see that are like, oof, oof, oof. You see them doing, but they're smaller ones, right? You don't have to join a $500 to $1,000 chamber of commerce. What you can actually do is look for smaller chambers of commerce that are not going to charge you an expensive amount to join their chamber. And some of those are like the Albany Park Chambers of Commerce. There's also the Northwest Connection Chamber of Commerce. So these are more smaller ones. They actually have their newsletters. They're trying to build community in their serving neighborhoods. And they're also doing the most as far as like spotlighting you through social media. And we all know that this world moves now through social media, right? Because it's not like the old times where you could just like send out flyers, go to places, right? Those times have changed, and chambers of commerce know that they have to adapt to the new phase of the reality, right? And that's building their own Facebook, building their own social media on Instagram and whatnot to make sure that they're spotlighting the businesses that they're serving, because unfortunately, if they're not doing that, right, they're doing a disservice to the community as well. And also, chambers of commerce are part of the initiatives for making sure that there's development within the neighborhoods. So if they don't know about your business, then obviously you're not going to get any customers if they're not aware that you exist and you have a storefront. For example, let's say you have a storefront in Albany Park, right? If you don't join the Chamber of Commerce, no one's going to know that there's like a beautiful nail shop around the corner of Lawrence and Troy, right? So you just need to make sure that you're just popping in there. Sometimes you don't even have to join. Some chambers of commerce actually allow you to send event information to their chambers of commerce. It's just, again, doing your research and also cold calling. It doesn't hurt to email a chamber of commerce and just be like, hey, can I ask you a few questions? And would you be amenable to the idea of me sending you my information as far as events and whatnot? Same with the aldermen. The aldermen also are there to advocate. So if you live within their district, they're actually there to support your needs. So basically, there's also open ward night. There's also one-on-one meetings that they do on a weekly basis, once a week, where they meet out with constituents and they kind of hear your problems. So if you're an entrepreneur and you need those services, I highly recommend that you establish a relationship with them. So it's always good to kind of go and see what the community is offering, what your alderman is doing also to spark interest in the small businesses, because we know that if there's not a lot of information or the alderman is not focusing on their small business, there's a lack of economic development there, right? So we need to make sure that we're also advocating as business owners to let them know, like, hey, this specific area is not working because you guys have signage here that you can't park at certain time, right? So if you're a storefront and your customers can't park in front of your spot, right, that takes away from the customer trying to enter your business. So some of the things that you can advocate for, right, are like, what can we do about changing the parking time zones? What can we do as a community to make sure that we're getting more individuals into our storefront rather than you limiting based on whatever is it that's existing or causing the problem, right? So those are some of the suggestions I have as to why it's an important resource, because aldermen are there, one, to serve your needs, and two, to create economic development for the ward and district that they're belonging to. So for them, if the district and the ward is being prosperous, then it's going to go well for them, right? They're going to be reelected because people are going to see, wow, there's major economic development changes happening here in my community. And that means that me as a business owner is going to grow as well, right? Because people are traveling, people are commuting to that specific neighborhood to find you as a business owner, your product and service.
So I know you mentioned so much information, which I recently connected with my alder person, and I almost like had I was just like, I can't believe I'm seeing you right in front of in my Zoom. And because we're working on building out our studio, and we were having some issues with like understanding the permit process and like zoning, and we got to get on a Zoom meeting, and I thought it was going to be with someone else, and then the alder person was right there, and I was just like, okay, get it together. Like, this is just a meeting. She's trying to help me. I'm trying to better the community. And yes, so it is possible. Like, sometimes we are thinking that we can't connect with these people because they're like so busy, but you're right. Like, they want to do things for their community, and we are part of the community, and we also want to do things. So it is valuable for them to be able to connect with us and help us in our vision, and kind of like that ecosystem of like, we're helping each other because we all want the same thing for our community. And going back to the Chamber of Commerce and finding one that fits with you, I remember my father was part of a Chamber of Commerce when he had his business a long time ago. And I would go to the meetings, but I was a little kid and didn't know, like, I was like, oh, I just have to sit at this meeting. He would say, you got to take notes. And so I'd just be like, okay, let me write down notes. But when I launched my photography business, like 10 years after that initial like Chamber of Commerce interaction, he was just like, you got to get connected with the Chamber of Commerce. You have to print out flyers. You have to do this. And I'm just like, but my community, like who I'm trying to connect with, like flyers are not the thing. Like, we are starting to be on Instagram. We're on Pinterest, on social media. And so I'm like, I need to connect with someone who understands that, not is just like print off 1,000 flyers and go put them on cars so that they know that I'm gonna be a wedding photographer. And so it is important that we also get involved in our chambers or in our communities, because the representation of our generation is important, because like we understand and can put input and give value in how we can reach our community and the generations after us, because we know technology changes quickly and the next generations are already on their own like marketing strategy. And even though like it sounds fun with the Gen Z and the other generations, but that is marketing, and we have to be able to hear the voices of the changing demographics and the changing generations in our community. So I'm glad that you said that, like, it's valuable for you to find a chamber that fits your target market, your target demographic, your target customers.
Yes, it is very important. And again, like I said prior to, it's just the times are changing so fast, right? And what we used to know in business is no longer the same for the world we're living in right now. And even the aldermen have had to adjust to that idea, right? Because before it's like very secretive. You didn't know where your alderman was, and no one knows what the alderman does. And like if you can participate in certain meetings, no, you can, right? If you're paying taxes and you're living within the ward, yes, you can definitely go. I know that sometimes it could be a little bit intimidating, or sometimes it could be that the time frames don't align with what your alderman usually has as far as events and office time frames. But you could also advocate for yourself and ask their front desk people if there would be a possibility to meet one-on-one. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to meet in front of a whole group if you want to have more of a private conversation, but also get the feel for the person that's in charge of your ward, right? You always want to make sure where their mentality is at, especially as an entrepreneur. Economic development is a very big thing in any barrio. So we just need to make sure who's actually filling that seat up, and also are they listening, right? Because one of the biggest thing is they could be in the seat, but are they listening to the needs, right? And I think that's one of the biggest things for me is like, you could be the alderman or the alderwoman or the alder person, but are you listening to what the community has to say? And I think that's where we need to come in, right? Starting to get involved to make sure that we're saying, you know what, I see that this corridor on Six Corners, maybe it's not working because X, Y, and Z. Or maybe we're not getting a lot of foot traffic because there's a lot of congestion during this time frames and whatnot. So just being able to be vocal, but also not feel as intimidated to show up, because if you don't show up in those spaces, someone else will. And unfortunately, that's why a lot of us don't get the resources, or we're not tapped into the grant opportunities that are out there, is because we're not going to these meetings. And if we're not going to these meetings, there's other community members that will take advantage of those grants and that will take over and just like hug it up and not share. So that's where Fempreneur comes in, because we're actually spreading the word about everything that comes into our inbox. So if I have different aldermen from different districts sending me things, then I'll reshare that on my Instagram account so that people know that, hey, there's a grant coming up. Make sure that you apply. For example, the city of Chicago has a grant with the food and beverage industry, which is worth, I believe, $15,000. And, the deadline, I believe, is either today or tomorrow. So if anyone's looking for a grant specifically in that domain, which is food and beverage, you guys should apply and also start looking into like, do I qualify and meet those requirements to get the grant? Just as with the Women's Founders Foundation with Vistaprint, there's another grant right there. And that's another one that, you can apply for and could help any small business entrepreneur as long as you meet the requirements. And one of my biggest tips is always read the requirements before you start tackling the grant application, because you'd be surprised how many times we see women apply and then they forget, or they overlook at least one detail, and that detail is the one that causes you, one, you just spend a couple of hours trying to get this grant done on paper, and two, you're not going to be qualified because you didn't meet a certain requirement. So it's just like making sure that you're taking your time and overlooking at least twice the application and those requirements so that you're not wasting your time as well.
I love that you said, like, make sure to look at all the requirements. And even if a deadline has passed on a grant or a scholarship, still look at the requirements and have it on your calendar for the next time that they offer the grant, because it does take time to do the grant application process. And nowadays, I've been seeing that grants are asking for a video. And so it takes time to write the script and like sit down to record and edit the video, and knowing that a grant is available to the community and the small business that you have, like, is going to be huge when you have the time to actually dedicate to the grant writing process. So don't be discouraged if you see a grant and you're just like, oh, I missed the deadline, or you didn't get it this time around. You can always apply again or be looking for similar grants to that. So as a person who has started this nonprofit, what are some challenges that you have overcome and didn't like realize that you were going to have to deal with? I think when we think of a nonprofit, we think like, oh, it's great because you just are giving money or like supporting small business, giving resources. It's so easy. And then when you actually start the process, you're like, oh man, this is hard. It's kind of like running a business. And so what have you learned in your experience through the challenges that you have faced?
Yes. So one of my biggest things that I've learned throughout this whole entire process, you can't do it alone. You can't. You need support, right? So with that being said, you really need to know who's actually an ally and who's actually a foe, because you will come into those situations where people at first, they start off, yes, they'll support you. But then once they start seeing that you're serious about something, things start changing in relationships, and you start seeing people like, going MIA or not answering some of your texts. So it does require a lot of having heavy investment in knowing who your people are and who those persons are going to be there, which you call them your ride or die, right? Because they're going to be there for you, for when you need it. Because it's not only your business, it's your mental health of mind. I have to tell you, I've struggled a lot. And I'm going to share this just with you guys because I want you to know the reality. I just a couple of months ago, so this is going to be my 6 months struggling with depression and specific issues of image. I've always struggled with it a lot because I came from a very abusive father that would call me names, and that kind of like led me to believe that I had something wrong physically with me. So when I started the nonprofit, I knew I had to use social media, but I refused to use social media because I was so scared of my appearance, about the way I looked, about the way I could speak. So that kind of like put my first few months on backtrack because I didn't want to use it as much. But then when I onboarded my board members, one of them has been very supportive, and they're like, forget about that. You use social media. People like you, they like you. And if they don't, they don't, and, I still struggle with creating video contents with my face on it and posting pictures of myself. I really don't like it. I usually try to put content that's from someone else, like either my board members or like entrepreneurs that I'm helping, or just relationships that I'm creating with other chambers. But I try to exclude myself a lot from that. And one of my biggest challenges has been social media. It's kind of takes a toll on you. You see that everyone's doing so well, and sometimes I felt like I was doing the least. And I'm like, how do they do it? I'm like, how do they create content constantly? And I'm like, and I could barely keep up. And then once my board member started to talk to me, she was like, you know what, you just need to create a month calendar of what your content is going to be and what you're planning to do. And then she's like, you're trying this out. It's your first year. You don't have to be so hard on yourself. So I needed that extra support. I needed someone else to motivate me because, as I said before, you can't do it by yourself. We all have and deal with what we call imposter syndrome. And I don't even know if that's the right word that I would call it, but I've lived through so much trauma that the trauma was impeding my success and for me to kind of like grow on social. So I did take time away also from LinkedIn because I didn't want to be associated with any post. I didn't want people to know that I was battling something that I struggle with since infancy, like, believing things that are coming to me where like, just basically like, am I doing this the right way? Am I worth it to even like have all this community and wonderful people surrounding me and supporting me? And those were the questions that were inundating my head all the time. And a lot of it also was like my appearances. And then I'm like, when my board member was telling me, you need to forget about those things. No one's actually worrying about what you're wearing, how your makeup is looking, how your teeth are looking. She's like, forget about that. You just post, share the information, and don't let that get to you. It's out there. It's out there. You're not doing anything inappropriate, dancing crazy or anything like that. You're just, doing good community work, and that voice needs to be heard because it's going to help others. It's not there to help you. It's not there to boost you. It's just there to make sure that people are getting the resources that they need. And that's ultimately our goal. So I guess, like I said, the biggest hurdle has been fighting with these demons that it's not only just about the business, it's also about what I went through as a child and how do I overcome those. So I took a break, like I said, from social media, and then I had some time to reflect because I was really struggling with the idea of even using social media. I was like, I don't even want to use it, but it is a different age. So you kind of have to go with what the world is moving towards. And, I finally realized, okay, we'll use social media, but, if I had to choose, I wouldn't. But it is the way the world moves. So we understand that, as an entrepreneur, we understand that most of the time, these entrepreneurs use social media to actually gain followers and also to boost their businesses. So I'm just so happy to see the other coin of it, right? Because I don't use social media because I've always been like a private person. I don't like people to know what I'm doing, who I'm interacting with. But once I saw the other coin of it, right? Like how these women were using their social media and for the ultimate goal, right? I was like, oh my goodness, like they're right. Like people are following you based on your product or service, not the way you look. They just care about whether the product is working or not. And that's exactly when I realized, like, I shouldn't be scared of going to a podcast. I shouldn't be scared of writing what I'm going through because it is the reality. We just sometimes only see the beauty of entrepreneurship. But in reality, there's days where I'm like, no makeup, and I'm like, and my kid is on the other side jumping behind me and like going like saying hi to everyone. And I'm like, please go over there. So it's a lot to deal with, but that is the reality with entrepreneurship, right? That it has its beauties, but it also has its, kind of like dark side to it as well.
I really appreciate you sharing your story and sharing it vulnerably. I think that is really relatable to a lot of us entrepreneurs. And even if you're not an entrepreneur, I feel like we can all relate to that feeling of self-doubt. And I am reminded of when I started this podcast and I was like terrified of being seen. And like as I grew and started to become more visible, I had to go to therapy because I was like, okay, I've hit this wall and I'm having trouble like moving past this thing. And so I'm a huge advocate for mental health. and getting the help that you need to grow in that mental capacity. Because like you said, entrepreneurship is mostly a mental game that we are, or more of a journey, a mental journey that we are embarking on and figuring it out along the way. Like we can know what to do, but if we're not there mentally, um, it's going to be a lot harder for us to move through those hard times and those blocks. So yes, I 100% can relate with you. And I think, our parents' generation, unfortunately didn't know the best way to communicate with their kids. And I feel like I talk to a lot of people who are relating to that emotional trauma, especially as women, when it comes to how we look, how we present ourselves. There's this expectation that was put on us from a young age, and it's really hard when that mindset is built in that formative stage to grapple with that as an adult and change it when you're an adult. So I really appreciate you sharing. I think that is valuable, and it's valuable for other people to understand that behind the scenes, it's not always the most pleasant. It's not always the most Instagrammable, but I'm also reminded of this conversation that I think I saw on TikTok, that this girl was asking someone, like, how do they get over that fear of public speaking, or like how do they know, like, if you're addressing a crowd of thousands, like how do you focus on what you want to say? And the speaker was like, well, I just focus on the impact that I want to deliver to my community. I'm focusing on the end goal of what my speech, my words can bring, the encouragement that it can bring, the support that it can bring. And I think that it is important for us to think about that, like, goal that we have, like, for our communities, for providing resources, for lifting the voices of others. And you kind of forget about your own self when you are focused on that other goal that is way more important than, is my hair, is my makeup on point, like, am I wearing the right thing, the quote unquote right thing. And so yes, if you see me out and about, I'm usually in sweatpants, leggings, a t-shirt, and I'm just like, look, I'm with my kids all day. This is how I'm going to show up. This is how I'm comfortable. So take it or leave it. It is what it is. Usually I don't have any makeup on, and I'm like, oh, okay, let me just get through the day, and however people want to receive me, that's on them. And I'm just going to bring the resources, the support, and encouragement. But it does take time to get to that place. So yes, thank you for sharing your experience and your story.
Yes, I think that it's also helpful to understand that sometimes, because this happened to me as well, someone reached out via LinkedIn and told me why I wasn't posting any content. And I was just taking a little bit like, how dare you? Like, I can post that whenever I feel like it, right? But also, I was like, it's very bold to ask someone, like, why aren't you? Like, I understand I'm a nonprofit, but I'm also a human being, and I'm not a perfect human being. I am a human being in all of its embodiment, right? Religious, a mother, a caretaker, entrepreneur, a founder, and so many other things. And, we also need to learn to respect that sometimes we go silent or MIA because we can't deal with a lot of what you see on social media. And if it starts affecting how you perceive yourself and also how you're doing your work, then I'd rather take a break. And sometimes people don't understand that we're not blocking or we're not responding to social media stuff that you might be sending because we don't like them. It's not that we don't like them. It's just that we need a break sometimes people need to also respect that, a lot of the content that is out there can be very stressful to someone that's building out not only their community, but is building out other people, right? How can you do the work if you yourself are not mentally prepared? So that's why I had to take some time from social media, because I just was like, I can't preach something if I'm not there mentally, right? Like I can't do my job if I'm not giving you my 100%. And for me, that's very essential. Like I'm not going to, put myself, in harm's way to, meet whatever social media standard I need to meet, right? I would rather just like take a break and then apologize to anyone if they thought that I might just be disregarding their messages or whatnot. It's just that I know myself and I know that there's a bandwidth also. And like I said, I wouldn't take anything personally on social media because it's very, very vague environment, right? We don't know what people are going behind the scenes. Like you said, Karina, when you started, it's very overwhelming. When I started, it's very overwhelming. And sometimes we just need that break from, kind of like comparing ourselves to others. And we need that time to kind of reflect and get back to who we are, to why we're doing this, and specifically why we're doing it for nuestra comunidad, right? Because we don't want this to kind of like be something that's going to happen. As you know, the tech and the technology that's currently advancing, it's so easy for us to get lost in translation and not see the human piece of it all. That yes, behind this screen, behind this podcast, there's still someone there that has feelings and that has emotions. And that's one thing that I also want to highlight is that we are human. We're not going to be perfect. We're not going to be gurus, right, with all the answers in the world, but we can definitely help assist you in what we can do to support you as a small business owner, but also as a caretaker, a woman, and all these other roles that we have, as society kind of like dictates some of the roles, right? We don't want it to be that way, but unfortunately, we still live in a patriarchal system that kind of puts the woman to do a lot of these roles, right? And it's kind of hard to detach from something that society has kind of coexisted with for centuries.
Yeah. Ah, I think that's a perfect way to end the episode. There's so much wisdom and empowerment in what you said, and I'm excited to continue to support what you're doing because I believe in the vision of your nonprofit. And I know that you have an event coming up as you celebrate 1 year. I'd love for you to share the details about that.
Yes, so we will be having our 1 year gala, which is a masquerade gala. So we're excited about this. It's going to be during Halloween time, so people can dress up really fancy, wear their masks. We're going to be having food, a DJ. We're also going to be having some surprises here and there. I'm not going to leak everything in a silent auction for everyone to come and enjoy the night. It's going to be on Fulton Street at the M Hub location, located on Fulton Street in Ashland, not the Fulton Market, because people get confused. So tickets are available for purchase at our website, www.fempreneur.com. It's under our Masquerade Gala tab. You can purchase your single ticket, student ticket, or if you want to come in as a group, you're also able to get those. But please do support us in joining us for Masquerade Gala on October 11th, which is a Friday at 6 p.m. And also feel free to support us at Fempreneur Poder Hub via Instagram. And yeah, we are looking forward to being 1 year in this business of the nonprofit sector and keep help supporting businesses along the way.
Yes, and shout out to Fempreneur because you probably have seen the logo on our Instagram page. I really appreciate you being a supporting sponsor in our event a few weeks ago, the Latina Brilliant Summit. So yes, I am excited to support you. I will be going to the gala and I hope other people come with me. I am wanting to connect with more people and bring people as well. So if you're listening and you want to come with me, just let me know. I will be there. But yes, and where can people best connect with you?
Yes, so we have our website, and as I mentioned to you, www.fempreneur.com is the best way to get in touch with me. You could also email me. So all the details are on our webpage. Basically, you just contact us if you want to have a 30-minute consultation to talk about your business or your business idea. But we do ask people to kind of have something in writing so we can go based off that. And see how we can assist you as far as resources to either start up your business or keep your business afloat.
Awesome. And if you could give one piece of advice, one piece of quick advice to an entrepreneur that is coming up, starting their business, what would that be?
Resiliency and tenacity. I think that that's what I speak about in my book as well that I've published. Resiliency is going to be the biggest piece that us as Latinas have, because we're one of those individuals that we won't stop. Like if someone tells you no, you're going to be like, I'll prove you wrong and let me see how far I go. So keep at with resilience. Your resiliency is going to take you far, but also your tenacity to do things, right? That tenacity, that spark that's going to give you like, I have my sazon. I'm going to bring it to the table and we're going to get this done, because that is going to be your biggest ally, and you telling yourself, I'm worth it. And I know I got this, because you do. You got it. I mean, if you could have kids and build a family and do your own entrepreneurship journey, you're doing it out there. It's just having the right community, the right space and mindset so that you can stay afloat, but also maintain your business, because you might want to pass it on as a legacy to your kids. So just keep at it and find the resources out there. There's free resources and there's no need to purchase stuff. So just look for those items along the way.
So good. Thank you so much. And I am excited to connect again and to see you soon.
Yes, definitely. Likewise.
All right. We'll see each other soon. Bye. There's still time to join us for the gala on October 11th. So send me a DM if you want to come with me. Okay, amigos, thank you so much for listening. I wanted to remind my podcast listeners that the Showing Up Latina in Business 3-month mentorship is open. This 3-month mentorship is designed exclusively for Latina business owners and leaders. Since being a business owner for over 13 years now, and with all of the millions of pivots I've had to do in the past 6 years, I found so much value in the people who I can bounce ideas off of, vent to, cheer me on through all the challenges, and also help me organize next steps in order to achieve my goals. As we prepare for the end of the year, I want to help you end it strong and prepare for a great 2025. If you're a first-gen entrepreneur, you know the struggle of doing all the things all the time and how it can be a little lonely trying to figure out everything alone. It can be overwhelming, which is getting in the way of faster growth. So if you've been thinking it would be great to have an accountability person or someone to bounce ideas off of and brainstorm next steps with, I'm your person. In addition to one-on-one monthly meetings, you'll also get the input of other jefas in our monthly group meetings. I'm seriously so proud of our 2023 and 2024 cohort members because I've seen their growth just skyrocket this year. You can go to elevatinglacultura.com/mentorship to get all the info. Doors will close soon, so don't wait. Okay, that's all from me today. There'll be a new episode every Tuesday, so after you listen, feel free to take a screenshot to post on Instagram and tag @elevatinglacultura or send me a DM. You can also comment on this YouTube video if you're watching online. I always like to hear from people and how they resonate with the stories that I share. So leave a review on Apple Podcasts so we can get more ears listening to these stories and we can continue elevating la cultura. All right, enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening, y nos vemos next week. Bye.